I start this soft dough recipe with milk, this time 3/4 of a cup, and I've heated it to just above body temperature. I'll add the yeast, 2 1/4 teaspoons. This egg bun recipe is based on a challah style bread. That means it's got a beautiful richness from egg, a little bit of oil, but also a hint of sweetness with a 1/4 cup of sugar. So this recipe calls for 2 full eggs as well as an egg yolk. I found to get that tenderness and richness in a challah dough recipe that I prefer using oil instead of butter. So I'll measure out a 1/4 cup of vegetable oil. In that goes. And 3 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. And lastly, 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Similar to the Parker House roll, this egg bun recipe takes the same kneading time and achieves the same consistency, but you'll see that beautiful yellow color come through. It usually takes about 3 minutes to knead the dough beautifully. And there we go. You can see how elastic the dough is, but also it's cleaned the sides of the bowl. The dough comes away easily, and I've still got a little bit stuck at the bottom. It's supposed to do that. It's a little stickier and softer than that Parker House roll dough because of the egg in there. But look at the beautiful color. And I'll just give it a little nice kneading just to shape it into a nice round before I let it sit and rise. Now I'll oil my bowl and give this a little cover. And this takes about 90 minutes until it doubles in size and is ready to roll. So here's the exact same recipe after 90 minutes, so you can see how it's blossomed up and doubled in size. So we'll take the soft dough, give it a little sprinkling of flour, and this recipe makes 12 individual buns. So I start by dividing the dough in half, and then each half in half, and now each of these pieces divides into 3. Now I'll put 11 aside to get to later and start with the first braided bun. So now I have to divide it in half. I'll roll this out, and you can see how easy it is to handle, and I really find it's the vegetable oil that makes this dough so smooth and easy to handle. So now what I do is create a cross with the 2 pieces of the dough and cross them right in the middle. With the horizontal piece on top, I start with the opposite, and all I do is overlap, and then overlap, and you can see the braid taking shape. You tuck in the end pieces, just give them a little pinch, and there you've got a beautiful braid. And I'll continue the braiding step with all the other pieces of dough. Drop that on the tray, and now it's time for the second rise, and it takes about 45 minutes, again for them to virtually double in size. And look at how, after the 45 minutes, they've puffed up. If you ever buy challah buns or egg buns in the grocery or at a bakery, you see they've got a beautiful shine to them and a rich golden color. That comes from an enriched egg wash. So not just an egg, but just the egg yolk is used. And to make it even richer, a little bit of milk. Just a couple tablespoons. Give that a little whisk. And then brush evenly so you get into every little nook and cranny of the buns. Here we go. And classically, you see a braided egg bun topped with sesame seeds or poppy seeds. So I'll do half and half. You can use untoasted sesame seeds because, of course, they'll brown in the oven. And now for poppy seeds. Now it's time for the oven. I've preheated it to 350, and these take 20 to 25 minutes. And you look for an even, rich, golden brown color to know they're ready. Gorgeous. Gotta love that beautiful, rich, shiny brown color. And look at how the braiding all bakes together. So when you tear into it, you get that beautiful egg bread texture. Application in the world of rolls and buns, hot cross buns. I've got 3/4 of a cup of milk I've heated to just above body temperature. That'll get the yeast activated. Now it's time for the yeast. I use 4 teaspoons. So on top of the glaze and the icing that I'll put on afterwards, I add 1/3 of a cup of sugar to the dough itself. This dough is far richer than the Parker House or the Braided Egg Buns. 3 whole eggs go into it. And for even more richness, 1/2 cup of vegetable oil. And now for the flour, 3 3/4 of a cup. I'll add to this 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. And now for the spices that are such a familiar part of hot cross buns. Start with the cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon, and then 1/4 teaspoon each of ground clove and allspice. And I love the addition that a bit of nutmeg in combination with the other spices adds. And that's about 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. A little bit of lemon zest. So I really am building cake-like, almost gingerbread-like flavors in here. And that's a teaspoon of lemon zest. I'll knead this for 3 to 4 minutes until it's nicely smooth and elastic. I can see the dough is smooth and elastic, so now it's time for the last 2 ingredients. Dried currants and diced candied citrus peel are traditional additions to hot cross buns. So 1/3 of a cup of the currants, and I'll just measure 1/4 of a cup of the mixed peel, and as the mixture's going, add it in and let it just pick up the dried fruits. And don't worry if the mixer doesn't do all the work for you. You can always finish that addition by hand. I'll tip it out and be sure to get any of the dried fruits and candied peel at the bottom. And just finish kneading it in by hand. A little oil in the bowl. And hot cross bun dough takes anywhere from 75 minutes to 90 minutes to double in size where it's ready to roll and shape. So here is a batch of the dough already risen. You really can see how it's doubled in size. So I'll turn on my scale and first weigh the entire piece of dough. 42 ounces divided by 12, since I want 12 buns, each one should be 3.5. So then I divide the dough into quarters. Then you want to weigh out the buns so they're each the same weight. There we go. So now, what you need to do to get a perfectly round shaped bun is create a taut surface on the outside. So what you do is you rotate the little bun around and tuck it in all the rough edges underneath. And as you do that, it spins the little bun around and creates, you can actually feel the taut surface. That is a beautifully rolled bun. As you practice, you can actually kind of cup the bun as you shape it. And I've got a 9x13 pan that's lightly greased, and I'll drop them into the pan, leaving an equal amount of space in between them. There we go. And it takes 45 minutes for them to fluff back up and be ready for the oven. Here's a batch of hot cross buns I made earlier and that had rested that 45 minutes. So now they're ready for the oven. I've preheated it to 350 and they take 25 to 30 minutes. I can smell those spices. No wonder, it's a personal favorite of mine. And while they're still hot from the oven, I prepare the first sugar glaze, the hot glaze, to get brushed on top. I'll measure 3 tablespoons of water into a small sauce pot. To that, I'll add 1/2 cup of sugar, I'll grab my vanilla and bring this up to a full simmer. I'll just add that teaspoon of vanilla in now, and I'll give it a little stir now and again, just to make sure all the sugar has dissolved. I'll grab a brush, and it's the brushing of the hot glaze onto the hot buns that keeps it from soaking in. I need to let the glazed buns cool fully to room temperature before the final step, and that's the icing sugar crosses. So to show you that, I have a dozen of the hot cross buns already cooled to room temperature. The glaze is really quite simple. I've got 3/4 of a cup of sifted icing sugar, and I add to that a tablespoon of milk. Just give it a little whisk so that it's thick enough to be piped. There, it has a nice flow to it. You can put this into a piping bag if you wish, but a little small parchment cone makes easy work of it. You take a triangle of parchment, fold it over itself, and bring the points of the triangle together, adjust it, and then fold it over to hold its shape. And I'll snip a little opening. Now, I'm ready to pipe. So just simple crosses right on top of each bun. After an hour, the glaze does fully set on top of them, making them easy to store and to transport. But of course, like all rolls and buns, they're best enjoyed the day that they're baked. So let me just pull one out. They come apart easily. And look at that beautifully rounded top. That's that rolling technique at work. You see the beautiful, gently spiced interior. And now that you've mastered